Hello, welcome back to ScottyFullStack.com. Today I wanted to do a tutorial on a DevOps button-click environment build, which is sort of the unicorn of every project manager in modern technology companies, specifically startups. But yeah, scrolling through LinkedIn, I came across this ad for a DevOps engineer with GCP, RabbitMQ, and Terraform. I'm not going to do GCP because that's not my strongest cloud. I want to teach you all cloud, and so I'm going to use AWS with RabbitMQ and Terraform. Specifically here, we want to cover AWS, Terraform, Ansible, Jenkins, and RabbitMQ, all from a DevOps infrastructure perspective. I'm not going to go into the RabbitMQ tutorials or application for that matter. I really think I just pasted a link to the RabbitMQ documentation tutorial, and you'll have enough set up here that you could run through that tutorial on your own instance. The goal of this site, of course, and my projects are to give you the experience to prove to a hiring manager that you can do their job, specifically their job, and you can be creative and create projects that are really geared towards them. And that gets you a little more visibility. Doesn't secure you a job. You still have to prove your knowledge. You have to understand things and dig a little bit deeper on your own, but this is something that catches the eye of any hiring manager, and if you can get yourself in the door just for a conversation, that is enough, and you can move forward from there. So let's talk about the project. We're going to use Terraform for our infrastructure. GitHub is a repository for our code, and then Ansible all to a Jenkins. I have on here server EC2, but we're going to do this locally. You could put this in an EC2 if you wanted to. I just didn't want to stretch our T2 micro free tier mileage. And also, I don't believe that Jenkins would handle that low of RAM very well in this instance. So didn't try it out. You could try it, but we're just going to do that locally. So Terraform is going to be stored in GitHub. Ansible is going to be stored in GitHub. And then our Jenkins is going to pull those files as we need them from those infrastructure repositories. And then it's going to do what we want. So this is going to be a fun and kind of interesting project. So on the blog, I have the prerequisites. I'm not going to go through these, but you do need to have these ready to go before you do the tutorial. So if you need to pause the video, do that now. But these are what you will need. By the way, the link to this is in the description. So that's going to bring us to part one of our project, the AWS preliminary setup. And just a reminder, guys, subscribe, helps me out. It pushes us forward, and also, makes me know that you all are actually enjoying and getting something out of this and finding this valuable. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, and we'll get started here on AWS. All right, so here we are in part one, the AWS preliminary setup. So what I want to do here, there are really three things we want to do. We want to create an IAM role. We want to create an EC2 key pair for our SSH, and we want to create a security group to lock down our EC2 to some degree here. So first what we want to do is navigate over to the IAM and under services, and we want to create a new IAM user. So users, add user, and then I want to name this one I'm going to name it for this tutorial DevOps user, and we're going to do programmatic access. And then here I want to just attach an existing policy, EC2 full access for this particular tutorial. You could always lock this down so much better. So no keys, we don't need that. And then just click through and we will create that user. Right, so we have our DevOps user, and then we have our access key and our secret key. And so what we want to do with this is go ahead and just copy it, and we can go down to a terminal, and we can do AWS configure, and then -- profile DevOps user. It's going to ask me for my access key, which I just copied, and then my secret key, and I'm going to paste that. Okay, default region for me is US East 1, no format, and there we go. Okay, so I have that added to my AWS configuration. And I am all done there. Now the thing that we want to do for this tutorial, and I've put this up here on the blog, is since I'm going to be using Jenkins for this, I really want to just come down here and put all of this in my configuration into my Jenkins AWS. So what I want to do is I make a AWS folder. I want to copy this over there, and then I want to chown it to be a Jenkins accessible. So I'm just going to paste that here. It's in the blog. Again, the link is in the description. Okay, so I just moved that over to Jenkins there, and we'll be using that a little bit later. And then the next part here is to jump over to the key pairs. So what I'm going to do is come back here and go to, you can type in key pairs, or you can type in EC2, but it's under the EC2 dashboard. I want to add a key pair. I'm going to name this RabbitMQ, just like on the blog. And then create. Okay, so that's been downloaded. And again, what we want to do is we want to add this to our SSH in Jenkins. So what we can do, just go ahead and just grab it, put it down here below the security groups. And I'm going to do that. Okay, so that's been moved over to Jenkins, chowned and permissioned, so we can jump in there. And then come over here and you can check here and see just to make sure, but I want to go ahead and jump over to, in the EC2, the security groups, create, and then you can put a description, RMQ access, and my default VPC inbound is what we want to add, custom TCP. This is again, I'm going to kind of open this way up to the public just on this one port, but 15672. So this will come in handy later. This is RabbitMQ standard admin panel port. The RabbitMQ service generally goes on 5672, but we're going to do the 15672 just to have that admin dashboard access. I'm going to do this from anywhere. I'm deleting this later. It doesn't really matter. But you would generally lock this down to your VPC, VPN access, or something of that nature, right? RMQ, TCP access, and then I want to add another rule, and I'm going to do SSH, and this one I'm going to do anywhere as well. You can pick my IP. That's what I would do. Again, generally lock this down very well, right? You don't want anyone gaining access that shouldn't have access. So I'm going to create that security group. And there it is. And so this is actually it for our AWS preliminary setup. Review that and make sure you secure it for what you need. But for the sake of this tutorial, that's all I need to do. So next up is the Jenkins preliminary setup and GitHub as well. All right, so the GitHub and Jenkins portion of this tutorial is pretty self-explanatory, so straightforward. I'm just going to go ahead and copy the name I want to name this, but I'm going to be making a repo. And if you're not familiar with GitHub, I'll show you the private key, but I'm going to use one for Jenkins here and public key. Head over here to GitHub, and I'm going to do a new repository, and I'm going to name it that. And I'm not going to add a description right now. I can do that later. I'm going to make this public for you all. We're going to add a README. I want to add a git ignore, and I want to look for Terraform. Okay, so I'm just going to have a Terraform file in there, and then, or git ignore, create it. Cool. All right, and then the next piece here is I actually need to go over to my main, profile, go down to settings, and add an SSH key that I need here for what we're going to be doing. So SSH keygen, and I'm going to name this, we can do, just copy this to Jenkins, RSA, something along the lines of that, and then no passwords for me here, and then we generated it, and now I can cat that .ssh Jenkins RSA .pub, because we need the public key. We're just going to copy all the way here, and we're going to come back up and add a new SSH key, add it there, and then we're going to call this like Jenkins. right? So there we go. So now we know what that is. That's our public key that we have, and that's what Jenkins is going to use to authenticate to this. So it's pretty easy, and we will do that configuration next in Jenkins. All right, and then the Jenkins piece here, again, I'm assuming that you already have Jenkins installed. That was in the prereq section, so if you haven't done that, pause it and then install it. Once you want to fire it up with sudo service Jenkins start, then you can get in with the initial password in the path that it provides you, or listed here on this blog. You can go ahead and just click through everything else, install the normal plugins, and then once you're in, you're going to want to pause it here, but once you're in, we're going to continue on and we're going to head over to the manage plugins. So pause it here, and I'm going to navigate there now. So once you are in Jenkins and you have it all set up, we're going to go over to manage Jenkins, manage plugins, and click on available. I already have this installed, so I'm just going to see that, but here if you just click on or search for CloudBees AWS, that is what we want to add. CloudBees AWS credentials plugin, because that's what we need for easy storage of those secrets without providing confidential information in plain text, and make sure you keep that from the wrong eyes and logs as well. So go ahead and do that. Once you install that, we are going to head back over to Manage Jenkins, and then I'm going to do my Manage Credentials. We're going to come in here, we're going to add what we need. So I'm going to add credentials. And this one, what I want to do is first, I'm going to do SSH username with private key. I'm going to call this Jenkins, Jenkins Connect for description, username parlor, and then here we have the private key. So what I want to do now is head over here and cat that Jenkins RSA key, and this is my private key. And of course I'm deleting this immediately, so don't share this with anybody. And I'm going to paste it there. Okay. And then no passphrase for me, right? So there's our private key. I can hit OK. So now we have our Jenkins private key. I'm going to add another credential, this time with the AWS credentials. And this one we can call AWS whatever. And then I'm going to go ahead and add the keys. So I'm actually going to pause this because I have other credentials. I forgot to download the file. So I'm going to quickly grab those credentials. Okay, so I've added my access key and my secret key. So you do the same, and I'm going to hit OK. All right, so my AWS creds are saved and my Jenkins creds are saved. And now we can head on back to our dashboard. And finally, what we want to do is head back over to Manage Jenkins, and then I'm going to go to Manage Users. I'm going to click on My User, and I want to configure. Now, there's this section called API token. I want to add a new token. As a matter of fact, I'm going to delete my old one here. I'm going to add a new token. I can call this API key, generate, and this is a API key that will disappear after this. Whoops, used to my terminal. And I'm just going to take note of that and save it. Otherwise, you can always go and regenerate a new one. So I'm just going to call this API key for now. I'll reference that later. Okay, so that is good. We can save it, and we are back out. So that's it for our Jenkins configuration. And next up is our Terraform section, where we'll start to dig into our infrastructure. All right, so before we forget, what I want to do here is just go ahead and clone my repo that we made. There's one thing we didn't do in the GitHub section, so we can go ahead and go to code, copy that, and I can come back here and do this. So git clone there. Okay, so we can actually now go back into that. That's my main project folder. And we have a README, and then if I check the secret files, I have a git ignore for my Terraform. So what we want to do at this point is back up and reference the structure of the project that we want to make sure you're aware of. Is we have an Ansible folder, an RMQ folder, and then my Ansible playbook to set up the RMQ. Then we have Terraform, RMQ, and then main and variables. Now, depending on the company, this is something I think is important to note, even though it takes some time away from the project, is usually you could have an infrastructure folder and then like an application folder or a configuration folder, right? Different repos actually. And your pipelines may reference those different repos depending on the pipeline itself. So you could have infrastructure pipelines, you could have application pipelines, which I think is the right way to do it. And the infrastructure ones will pull from the infrastructure repo, and the application one will pull from the application repo. And you keep it completely separate. It's immutable in theory. You have your code stored in a repository. If you blew away the instance, you could immediately rebuild it. And that's the point of the button click environment build, right? If I wiped out the infrastructure by accident, and the state was either a stateless application or it was somewhere remote. In theory, the receptionist, who may have no technical understanding at all, should be able to rebuild your environment in 30 seconds. That's an exaggeration, but you should be able to click a button and it do everything for you. That is the dream, right? And that's why I called it a unicorn. It's where a lot of people are headed, and I think that's where I want to get you all. So take note of my folder structure here. Again, this is all one repository, but I think that probably the better way professionally to do this is to separate the repos. Anyway, so here inside of our main project, we're just going to create the directories that we want, and then we are going to start with our Terraform for the RabbitMQ. So let's do that. I'll just copy this because it's easier. And it's just making Terraform RMQ, and then we're going to cd into that and touch our main TF and our variables TF. So here I'm in there already. So if I just wanted to open up this project, I could. And here we are. I do want to open up the project because I want to work on the project. So now we're in VS Code, and I'm going to go ahead and open up both of them, actually. Why not? Okay, so inside of our main.tf file, we want to do our provider as AWS, and then we want to set our region equals US East 1. And then I want to add my profile as a variable that we're going to be setting called var.profile. And that's it for our provider section. We want to add a resource. And again, there's more of this in our DevOps 01 tutorial. AWS instance, and this is going to be called something like RMQ or whatever you want to name it. And from here, I want to go ahead and start my AMI, and I'm just going to grab an Ubuntu AMI. So grab that. And then I'm going to go ahead and do instance type, and this is going to be a T2 micro. And then next is the key name, and that I want to do RabbitMQ. Oh, because that's what I created in the key pair in the first step, but for AWS. But I am, using VS Code and using extensions that help me autocomplete, by the way. So definitely something you want to look into. VPC security group IDs. This one, what I want to do here, I could copy it from my blog, but I want to show you. Here, I just went ahead and created my security groups. I couldn't copy it from the blog because it's a different one, but my RabbitMQ ID that I created earlier, I'm going to paste that there. Now we're going to go down here still inside resources. We're going to do tags, and this is going to be more variables. So name is going to be var.name, and then I want to do lowercase n for that, and then next is going to be another var called group, and this one is equal to var.group. And if I want to stay consistent with my tutorial, I believe I have a lowercase g, I hope. And then that's it for this file. I want to jump over to my various.tf. Now, if you're not familiar with Terraform, the main.tf in the whatever is in the the directory that you are in, your main TF is in. If there's a variables.tf file, you're whenever you do the Terraform init and then the plan, apply, or destroy, it's going to grab variables from that file. So what we want to do is just, since we're going to be doing a lot of this in Jenkins, we're just going to define variables here. So for instance, I'm going to do a variable and then name, right? Because that's actually what I want to, it's just auto-completed that way. I'm going to do just description. Name the instance on deploy, something like that. Another one, remember we did group, and here we can do description and just do something like, because this group is more for RabbitMQ and Ansible, so the group tag for Ansible to identify RMQ. I don't know if I mentioned it at the beginning of the video. I don't think I did. We're going to be using Ansible's dynamic inventory of AWS. So we should be able to, when we deploy an EC2, rather than update the host file every single time, and RabbitMQ is going to automatically identify those new EC2s as they pop up, as long as they have the tag that we're going to use for RMQ. And then the final variable is profile. And oops, I'm going to do variable profile. And this is going to be just the description. Doesn't really matter. Profile we will use for deploy, something like that. This might not be exactly what's on the blog, but I'm just typing as I go. So now what we want to do here is just check our branch. Typically, you're obviously going to want to check out a new branch. I'm not going to. I'm just going to commit straight to domain. So I'm going to just come back here and then git add, git commit, and I can do we can do initial commit, something descriptive, Terraform. Whoops, spelled it wrong, but don't care. Push origin main. So I'm pushing that up to my repo now. You should too. And proper branching is always appreciated, so just get used to that. Obviously, if you're working in a professional setting, you'll play by their branching rules. But again, for the sake of this video, I'm just going to be doing that. Okay, and that's it for our Terraform segment for RMQ. Next up is going to be our Jenkins job. So get your Jenkins instance ready, and we will get started on that now. All right, so we're at the Jenkins portion of our tutorial, and so what we want to do here is I'm just going to name my job RabbitMQ tutorial. So back in our Jenkins dashboard, we can create job. We can paste that here, freestyle, hit OK. Immediately out of the gate, if you notice on the blog, we have some parameters here. I'm going to go ahead and do those now. So this project is parameterized. Add a parameter. I'm going to do a choice to start, and this one is going to be called action because this is going to be our Terraform action. So we're going to plan, apply, and destroy, all on separate lines. And then this is going to be like a description, the action, or the Terraform action. And then you can say like something like use carefully. Okay. The next one is going to be like Ansible, or you could do, it doesn't really matter what order, just whatever is easier for you. Ansible is a Boolean, and we want to have a true as a default value, or false depending on your preference. And what this is going to do is going to be run Ansible playbook post Terraform. Okay, and it's either true or false. And then we're going to come over here and we're going to add a string parameter. This one's going to be called name, and the default value can be like RMQ or whatever you want to name it by default. And then we can just have the name of the instance. Next, string, this one can be called group. and we want the default value to be like RMQ for sure, or like RabbitMQ, but that really ideally should not change. It can change, but I mean, in this case, we don't want it to. I'm making it optionally. You could change it if you want, just so you can have experience with this, but you could really hard code something like that, I think, later on. But the group for Ansible to dynamically register inventory, something like that. All right, and that is it. Next, we're going to go down here to source code management and do Git. I'm going to take that repository URL that we have and come on back, paste it there, and my credentials are going to be the ones that we put in. Now it just throws an error right away, but it goes away. So those are my SSH credentials. That's my Git repository, and it's telling me now it can connect, so that's good. My branch is actually main. I know this is on a date. GitHub switched kind of the naming from master to main, and then we can leave that, head on down. We don't need to trigger this remotely. We'll do that later on another job. And then the build environment's fine. Now the build step. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to copy what I wrote out in the blog just for time's sake. However, I will explain it real quick. So if we scroll down on the blog here to the shell. Oh, I forgot something. See, that's why I write these blogs first. So let's go ahead and do the shell first since I started it, but we got to do something else. So I'm going to do this real quick. Let's add this in to shell. Now what I've done here is it's just a real simple if else statement for in shell, right? So we just have if action, which is the the parameter we set in earlier in the parameters. If it's apply, then I want to run Terraform init on Terraform RMQ. That's our relative path inside of the repository. And then we want to do Terraform apply, right? And then the variable's name profile I have set hard-coded to DevOps user. And then group is our group that we have in the parameters. I'm going to do auto approve, which is just ignore the the prompts that Terraform provides us, and then all of that on the Terraform RMQ directory. Else if it's plan, do sort of the similar thing. We're going to add something to apply. That's why I have 3 of them. So this is going to have something added later. Plan is right now this is pretty much the same thing, and then the else statement is going to be the destroy, and that will have has its own purpose as well. So that'll be the destroy function, so that's it for that. Now let's just jump real quick back up. I apologize for that. The build environment, we just need the secret for AWS access keys. So let's head back over here and use a secret file or secret text or files, and we can add our AWS access key and secret, and there it is. It's already added by default for us if it's the only one you have, right? So select that and then apply this and save it. And that's it. We have our first job. And as a matter of fact, we can plan it right now if you want. So I would uncheck Ansible because there's nothing there to error out. Plan, RMQ, build it, and we should be able to see our project start. And there it goes. So it's already initializing Terraform, and it did that. So it planned for us. It started our whole thing here. It's got 1 EC2 to add, 0 to change, 0 to destroy, and that's our plan. So you just ran a Terraform plan in Jenkins, and so that's pretty cool, right? But if you're interested in like scripting for DevOps, this is just like the simple kind of stuff that you would do just to save yourself manually hard coding everything. It's just a quick, if else. So check that out, review it, but it's nothing fancy there. So that's it for the first section of our Jenkins. We'll have more, but now we're going to move on to the Ansible and the dynamic inventory. So stay tuned. All right, so this is part 5, Ansible and dynamic inventory. So like I said, we're going to use the Ansible's dynamic inventory to auto register our EC2 instances into into our inventory, so we don't have to automatically add it to a host every single time. So I just did another one of these little just quick line by lines, make directory Ansible RMQ, and then touch RMQ playbook inside of that directory that we just created. So let's go ahead and copy that, and I'm just going to paste that in here in my directory, and then so we're in there. I can open up that playbook if I want for later. So the next step here is the Ansible config, a directory inside of our Etsy Ansible folder called group vares, which Ansible auto picks up, and specifically when we mention a tag name, which you'll see below, it will pull up that variable specifically for this inventory that we're making. And so right here below, I just wrote up quick printf statements, 2 of them, and then a make dir as well for the group vares. You can just copy and paste this in. What I'm putting in these files is like right from Ansible's documentation, so I'm not doing anything fancy here. This is just a copy and paste from their docs, and same here. So this is the only thing you need to know, specific to this project is we have our right here, our number one, our group var file name, we're naming it RMQ, but inside of that file, we are putting in a private key, which is our RabbitMQ private key in the Jenkins SSH. And that's going to reference our Jenkins SSH. And then Ubuntu is our user, which Amazon, auto created when our EC2 is made, or auto creates when our EC2 is made. And that's really it. So that's going to go and be written into this file inside of this directory. And then our Ansible config is going to have a default section and just the host key checking. You might want to check and see if you have this file already. Sometimes it's auto-generated. So I am going to copy this. I'm not going to type it all out. And I can just paste it here. And there we go. So our 2 files were created and populated with that information. Next up here on the list is we need to create, inside of our Etsy Ansible, we need to create an AWS ec2.yaml file, and that's going to be sudo because we have to be root for that. And then you're going to want to put all of this, which is again straight from Ansible's docs. If you were to head over to the documentation, which I have linked in this article at the top, you will find the Amazon EC2 segment there. Now what I am adding here is the prefix for tag, which they may or may not have standard in there as well. I don't remember at the top of my head. Then the key is tags. So, and then we want to, our compose is Ansible host is the IP address, right? So this is what this file is doing. Again, this is standard in their documentation, is we're just saying it's US East 1, our Bodo profile, which is, a Python library, which you should have if you downloaded this correctly, but that is gonna default to our, whatever configuration we have for our AWS. So in this case, it is DevOps user, which we, put into our Jenkins home directory, by the way, at the beginning of this. So plugin is Amazon AWS EC2. The Bodo profile is DevOps user. Regions is US East 1 in my case. Strict is false. Keyed groups, tag and tags, and then the Ansible host IP address. Now this prefix tag, the reason why that's there is because here's the prefix on that variable file that we had. That is what's being referenced here. So this is just saying, hey, for the inventory, take everything in that, for specifically like the configuration for this group tag, and then apply it to our inventory. So I'm going to copy this as well, and in this case I'm going to vim Etsy, and then Ansible, and then AWS EC2. I have to do sudo, sorry, and we're going to write that in. and so that's there. And now we need to come back and look at our playbook. So let's go ahead and we can type this one out. Let's head on down to our playbook. So I just do that for sake of ease in YAML. So name of this playbook is going to be something like, I don't know if it's exactly right, but configure our Jenkins, and then like job or whatever, and then we can do our hosts, which, by the way, this is YAML. As you see, it kind of gets all messed up, but our host for this is going to be the tag group RMQ, which is, again, immediately referencing that file. And then the tasks are going to be -name. So be very careful with your tabbing here. Install RMQ, something like that. Oops. RMQ, and then we're going to do become, yes, because I want to be a sudo user for this, and then the shell. Now this is what I'm going to copy and paste because I have I went to the RabbitMQ documentation, and they have a lot of comments, a lot of stuff on there that frankly I don't really care about in this tutorial. And you can decide what you want to do, but this is directly from RabbitMQ's installation instructions, and I'm just going to add it. If you have Windows and you don't have Erlang or Mac, there may be different steps. This is just for, I'm using Ubuntu, as you may or may not know, and this is steps for me. So I'm taking this and I'm going to just paste it because it's easy. Okay, so that is that. I should probably tab it. Okay, and now we can move on to the next step that I want. So in the next segment, we're going to do name, and this can be like start, like RabbitMQ. So we're going to start up the service, and then for this we need to become as well. And then we want to do another shell, and this one is going to be the service, similar to how we did Jenkins, right? RabbitMQ-server start. Okay, we can do that, and then so that's it for that one. Now we can do -name, and this one, what we're going to want to do is enable the admin, enable RMQ admin dash, so you can like see a GUI interface and do their tutorial pretty easily. Become yes, and then add a shell step, and this is going to be RabbitMQ plugins, and again this is all in their documentation, so you can reference that if you need to, but RabbitMQ management. Okay. And then the next and last step that I'm going to add is going to be to add a user. Now again, you could like SSH in, and as root you can run the RabbitMQ service in the command line of your EC2 instance. But in my case, I'm just going to go ahead and conveniently add a like initial user here. So for name, what it's going to be is become yes, and then another shell. In this case, we want to do like multiple line, and RabbitMQ control is the command line utility. Add user, and I'm going to make just my user, and we can do like a welcome one or something like that. Very secure, right? And I'm all about security. RabbitMQ control, and this one's going to be set user tags parlor, and then add administrator. So that is it for our RabbitMQ playlist. So I saved it, and now what we can do is we can end up pushing this up to GitHub as well. We will go ahead and come back here to our main git add, git commit, Ansible, push origin main, right? So that's going up, and now our Jenkins job can reference that Ansible playbook. So in the final steps here, we're going to jump back over here, and we're going to create another job specifically for this. We're going to have a remote build trigger, use that API that we used, that token, and when we check Ansible, we'll remote launch it. So stay tuned for that. That's next. Right, so we're in the final segment here, the home stretch, and this is part 6, the final steps in launch. We're going to create this new job called the RabbitMQ configuration. And so this is going to come up here. We're just going to keep things separate. Let's head back to our dashboard, and then we're going to do a new item, name it RMQ, RabbitMQ configuration freestyle project, and hit OK. So from in here, what we want to do is git, and then we're going to paste our repository yet again for this particular repo that our Ansible script is found in, and our key is, of course, our original key. Our branch is main, not master. And then here what I want to do is trigger builds remotely. And so this is for auth, right? So the auth token we can create, you'd want it to be, ideally something secure, but I'll just do RMQ token, something easy to remember, or on the blog, I think I put something sarcastic. So RMQ token, and then we'll use ultimately this path here with our localhost 8080 to authenticate, and we're going to add our username and API token to that. So we'll get that from the blog and paste that in there. And then if we scroll down here, we'll add a build step of shell, and this is again on the blog, but what we're going to do is just have our Ansible playbook command reference our specific inventory here in this case. So -i flag is going to reference our YAML file that we created, and in the Etsy Ansible folder, and that is going to obviously auto discover our EC2 instances, and then the directory for our playbook is Ansible RMQ, and then RMQ playbook.yaml. So we can apply it and we can save it. And then the last step here is to head back over to our Terraform build, and we're going to configure this. And what we want to do is head back down to our shell, and in the apply segment, so we're going to add another if statement here to say if Ansible is true, then we want to run specifically that job that we just made. So what we can do here is I can just copy this if-else statement, which again, you have the if and you have the finalizing line. Ansible, then we're going to curl the HTTP request that we got basically from that other job, except I want to change this to, I think I just did RMQ token, and then our user is going to be our username, and then our API token. So let's go ahead and copy this and head back over to our job, and I'm going to paste that in there, and I want to bring that back. And then that's fine. Curl, and then the user is going to be sparler, and then the API token cat API key that I saved in step 1 of the preliminary. Whoops. And so there's my API for my user, and then what I want to do is change this to RMQ token. All right, so so there we have our finalized setup for the shell. We can apply it and save it. And now what we want to do is we already planned it, originally. So I just want to apply it now and hit build. And so we're going to see a couple of things happen here. So first, the build is occurring. We can look at the output real quick. We're going to see that it's creating my instance right now.
I'm going to go back and we can watch that dashboard just real quick. If I come back over here to my EC2 dashboard and check out my instances, right? We have my RMQ standing up right now. So that's pretty cool. If I come back over to Jenkins, once that's done, what we're going to see is another job kickoff, which is going to be our configuration job. And so there, my job is now kicking off. We can actually click on that output if we want. So we're gathering our facts. It already found our EC2 instance with that tag of RMQ, right? Now it's installing RabbitMQ. Okay, so looks like our RMQ was installed. It's now started, and we're now enabled the dashboard, and we are done. So that job finished successfully. Now we can actually just take this public IP or DNS and do it on 5.6.7.2, just like our 15.6.7.2, just like we set up in our security group, and hit enter. And here we are. So our RabbitMQ dashboard is up. We can now do our login with welcome one, and I am in. So this is where I cut my tutorial out, because I could easily, just go through the RabbitMQ tutorial, but I have linked that in the blog. So check that out. It is right here. And that's the first tutorial. If you're brand new to RMQ, you start out there. If you're familiar with RMQ, you can have at it and build whatever you want. I dream of, I've never done this, but I dream of being able to send this to a recruiter and giving them a user to log in and see, and you could say hey, check this out. I think that'd be just a really cool idea. That's kind of the goal of these projects, is to make things accessible to hiring managers. Give IM roles if you need to with limited access. Do what you need to get the job. People love seeing enthusiasm, love seeing creativity, and so just kind of create something to show that you can do the job. So thanks for joining me, and thanks for sticking around. Remember, subscribe and interact. I have a Slack channel. I communicate on LinkedIn. Scotty Parler. Definitely reach out, talk to me. I think it's just awesome that we have a community, and I want to be here to help you like others have helped me. So again, thanks, and I'll see you on the next video.